Now, still on the protest, as Nigeria braces for proposed hardship protests, stakeholders in the oil and gas industry have identified issues driving up petroleum product prices. As you would see, there are queues in many filling stations around the country. According to Publicity Secretary of Crude Oil Refiners Association of Nigeria, Mr. Doko, the Nigerian government must put forward Nigeria First policies to help reduce pressure on disposable income. He made this comment on Business Morning earlier today.
Koran has been championing the cause to push for domestic refining, and truth be told, we have in our own stride with very little input from the government been able to get refineries running. As we speak, we have about six of such refineries, 100% privately owned, running in Nigeria. And we have to do these things to stem the tide of things like this. Let's try to get products to the Nigerian market at a relatively affordable rate. The Americans always say America first. Would say in formulating policies that governs the oil and gas sector, make Nigeria first. Let the interest of Nigerians and Nigeria be first above the merchants that trade with us. When you're making policies, let policies be such that would grow the domestic Nigerian oil and gas industry before we begin to look at what happens globally.
Yeah, you would remember we tried to have that conversation with Mr. Idoko on Thursday, but there was a network issue, and so we're glad we're able to get him in the studio this morning to react to some of those burning issues. Now, still staying on the planned protest, we're going to discuss now with former member of the Nigerian House of Representatives, Ms. Nkoyo Toyo. Perhaps she has some ideas if these can still be averted. I know if you watch our sister program, Sunday Politics, yesterday, you would see that conversation with one of the organizers of the protest saying they are determined to hold it. But I mean, when we look at the past, especially not so long ago, the NSAS protest and what it turned out to be, properties, lives, and all of that. But of course, on the other hand, there's also the cost of not protesting, of not speaking up in the midst of what the economic hardship which people are going through. And of course, people do have the right to protest. Now, let's find out the stance of Ms. Nkoyo Toyo. Joins us from France. Ms. Toyo, thank you so much for your time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So what are you? Yeah, good. So what are your thoughts on this protest? I mean, when we look at the macroeconomic indices, it's obvious that people are not as happy, and you wouldn't blame them. People are still queuing up for petrol, which they pay for at very high price. The price of basics that are being consumed have really skyrocketed more than 100% in some cases. And so people want to speak out. But on the other hand, we see the cost of these protests that it could have on the economy, on economic activities, standstill. The fear of it being hijacked is also another one. What do you see? What's your perspective on this issue?
Sadly, we are in a very unfortunate situation. Either way, we are going to face different consequences, whether that is against the people and against the infrastructure and destruction of property. We're still going to see consequences, whether it is one in which the people do not say anything at all and have to live with the consequences of the policies which they are currently facing, similar to the one that you just highlighted, the situation with fuel in the country. Whichever way you look at it, there are going to be consequences. And I believe that that's the sad situation in which we find ourselves today. Obviously, you will agree that the cost of living has become extremely exorbitant, way above the income and earnings of most Nigerians. And even if you ignore it, on the 1st of August, it will continue to be there. Question is, what do we do to stop this? What do we do to even give people a sense of hope and a sense of we can do something about this, this can be changed? Because I think that's what the message I hear people trying to convey. Back in 2023, we had come up with something called the Civil Society Labor Forum Front, which is basically our attempt at trying to collaborate with the labor unions. Were very unhappy about the situation with the minimum wage and other salary-related issues. And we felt that it wasn't something we should have left to the civil society, to the labor alone, that the wider society had issues to address. I think back in the time, there was huge opportunity for us to negotiate and discuss. Dialogues per se are not what we need now. We need dialogues and we need negotiations. We need trust, because people need to begin to hear the language of policy is not against them, policy is for them. I think what people are hearing is a message that says the policies are working against them, and absolutely there is no solution. So I agree with you absolutely that we're in a very difficult situation right now. And either way you look at it, the country has to face certain consequences. And we pray for consequences that are less painful, but at the end of it all, consequences are what we need to face. And I believe there's a lot that can be done. And one of the things that we need to do is to move away from looking at this as political and beginning to look at it more from the people's perspective as hardship. What does hardship mean? How do people deal with hardship? If there's no amount of politics you blame on other people, that will take away the hardship. The hardship remains the hardship. So how does the country begin to address the question of hardship so that hardship becomes the mainstream of what we are doing? Right now, we are here, the country could not have survived. All the parties wanted to do away with the subsidies. All that is agreed. Now we are faced with the consequences of what we have done, the decisions and policies we've taken. How do we go about addressing the dire consequences that have emerged from some of those decisions? And I think the missing discussion now and the channel for those discussions is, how do you make me or an ordinary citizen of Nigeria believe that whatever is being done will be in its best interest? I mean, some people have argued that 4, 5, 6, 10 years from now, Nigeria will be in a much better place. We don't know. It could be so. But people have to deal with the current situation in which they find themselves. And that's the reality on the ground. I can return to talk about some of the things that need to be done.
Yes. So I hear you say two things. I mean, they just pop out from what you have said. The first is trust, and then the other is dialogue. Now, if you tell us how you think this can be done, because when you talk about dialogue, all through last week, we did hear the president was meeting with traditional rulers, he was meeting with ministers, SGF had a meeting representing the president, so these are dialogues, but it seems not to have calm nerves, even up till now.
Okay, so I in particular, I used to facilitate something called the Niger Delta Dialogues under President Buhari in 2016, and a couple of us came together. You see, the dialogue has to be with the affected. The dialogue has to be with the people who have the power to change and rediscuss the direction of things. Right now, when a traditional ruler and the government seeks to discuss, they're not necessarily the ones who are being impacted upon. They are the ones who are the gatekeepers, oftentimes, in terms of what happens in society. So we need to have direct discussions. And I just want to take you back to what we did. If you remember back in 2016, there was almost a close down of all the oil installations in Nigeria. They were blowing them up. The production levels fell significantly to less than 1 million barrels per day. And the country was in a very difficult economic situation because we weren't getting the kinds of resources we were looking forward to run the country. And what we did as the Niger Delta and PANDEF, under the leadership of Chief Ike Clark and a host of other leaders from the community, was to reach out to the agitators. And that was a direct conversation. And this led to discussions between the ministries or petroleum directly. Several dialogues were held. And I need to add that dialogues do not end the problem. You must negotiate. Trust means that I don't believe in you. So then I come to the table to dialogue with you. I want to hear what you're giving me. So there must be some bargain. There must be some negotiation. There must be some conversation as to what we take away. So I mean, look at what's been happening with minimum wage, for example. That one is a clear, direct case of unionization and negotiations. And yet we've waited a year and how many months now? We still haven't seen any progress or significant progress in that regard. So the point in question is that trust deficit has a huge implication. I think the breakaway from the union and the labours in terms of how they negotiated that process has also given a reason for the rest of the country to feel, well, if Labour has now gotten what it wants, what about the rest of us? So there is room for a lot more of these discussions and negotiations. And my sense of this is that the federal government has made a serious move towards local government autonomy. These conversations need to happen at the level where people are actually hurting. If you think about it, palliatives were sent to states, but absolutely all the stories around it suggest that palliative is not working. The first ministry to be struck by any form of scandal is the palliative ministry. And up till now, we have a suspended minister. We don't know what the outcome of that is, whether she's returning or she's still remaining out of this ministry, or what exactly is the status of the whole thing, and who is even managing that whole process right now. So there are a lot of gray areas that I think we need to see more structure to it. And secondly, we need to realize that the strategies of the past, palliatives in particular, are not working. The Nigerian system has now taken over palliative, and it's making palliative look like it is actually a problem rather than a solution. We need to come up with more grassroots-driven, grassroots-based, more direct interactions with the communities. And I think that, yes, at some point the president did engage the governors, but there's need for so much more to happen in terms of reaching out. And let me add quickly in here that I think we haven't even started having a proper conversation on the hardship issues. As we speak, farmers in the north are complaining about the scarcity of rain, which is where most of the food is grown, which means that we're likely to see some elements of drought if the rainfall does not improve. Therefore, even the food insecurity that we are already facing will be complicated by the fact that we do not have enough to feed the citizens. The cost of it, inflation and everything is just a fraction of the problem. So we're not addressing solutions to the problem. We're addressing what we will call placating the problem. And this placating of the problem is not actually touching the citizens directly. The citizens are not made to feel that this is about them. It's still about, oh, we had to take out subsidy. Oh, it's the fault of Buhari. He didn't run the country well. Oh, the PDP messed up the country previously. Oh, the salvation has come. What do we understand this to mean in practical terms? So my comments would be that we need to have a more deeper understanding. It seems to me that the discussions that are happening are cross-purpose. It's not directed at the real problem. The root problem is that people have no food to eat. They are hungry. They're in need of food they can afford and buy. The food that is available is too expensive for most of the citizens to buy.
All right, Ms. Toyo.
We need to do something about
All
that.
right. Yeah, thank you so much. And I think at the end of the day, what you're proposing is dialogue with the people who are directly involved and affected. Former member of the Nigerian House of Representatives, Ms. Nkoyo Toyo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, too.